Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone joining us today, and welcome to our latest edition of Rise and Ignite. Today, I'm joined by the CEO and co-founder of Dazz, Merav Bahat, Thomas Schwartz, Dazz's CTO and co-founder, and Joe Silva, the Global CISO at JLL. And we'll be talking about how organizations can reduce cloud security risk faster with automated remediation. This is a topic that I'm super passionate about. I've worked in the cybersecurity industry for a number of years and seen the amount of time high-skilled individuals spend performing manual but repetitive processes. There is so much opportunity to automate and streamline risk management. And it's a really important topic now, both with the ongoing geopolitical conditions and organizations continuing to accelerate into the cloud. It's bringing with it huge business opportunity, but also a whole host of complexity and new exposures. As organizations deploy more tooling to combat the growing threat surface, security and IT teams are being bombarded with vulnerability alerts, misconfigurations at an increasing rate, which is ultimately driving a level of fatigue and overwhelming operational teams. So how can you manage this expansive perimeter in a controlled way and keep your teams working on meaningful problems? At Insight Partners, we invest in innovative technology solutions that help to solve some of the most difficult challenges faced by organizations. And one of those solutions is Dazz. Dazz accelerates cloud remediation for security and engineering teams. The Dazz Remediation Cloud maps your code to cloud pipelines, reduces your security alerts to their key root causes, and remediates issues right in the heart of the developer's workflow. With Dazz, you gain full pipeline visibility, cut through alert noise, increase the value of existing tools, and shrink your risk window by reducing time to remediate. And in a moment, I'll hand over to Merav and Toma to talk through their solution to this important challenge. But before I do, let me just tell you a bit about these two fascinating individuals who co-founded Dazz just 2 years ago. Before founding Dazz, Merav spent several years at Microsoft, including as the GM for the Microsoft Cloud Security business in Israel. Here she learned firsthand about the challenges organizations face trying to respond to the growing threat from cloud. She also has a strong background across a number of product management, strategy roles, so knows exactly what it takes to bring a great solution to the market. And before that, she served as an instructor for the IDF's Infantry Brigade. Toma, now CTO for Dazz, also worked at Microsoft as director of the Security Response Center in Israel. He previously co-founded Armis and also spent 6 years in various cybersecurity-related roles in the Israeli Intelligence Corps. I mean, you could do a whole series on just their background, but let's focus on the topic at hand. Introducing Toma and Merav from Dazz. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Will, and thanks for everyone who joined us today. It's a great pleasure to be here and talk to you about Dazz. And we'll start with a quick introduction of the company, and then we can actually move on to the Fireside chat. So Dazz is the remediation cloud. And I think just in numbers, I share a little bit about the company. So we started Dazz in 2021, and we were almost 100 employees, raised $60 million. You can see the Insight Partners is definitely one of, they led the A round and definitely one of our most important partners. But we're most important and more proud of the number of customers that we have, and it's 20 customers of the Fortune 500, and we have beyond that customers at the up and comers and some tech cloud native companies. So this is in a nutshell about Dazz, and now you hear more about the technology, the problem we solve for, and we'll meet again at the Fireside chat.
So the problem that we've set to solve with starting Dazz is remediation. The situation right now in every single client environment that we have the opportunity to help with is that they have maybe 10 or 15 or 20 tools that detect potential vulnerabilities and misconfigurations in their cloud environment. So they have really good optics and good data around what kind of risks might happen from the infrastructure to application, from code to pre-production to production. But it's a lot of data, and it means that it's very difficult to correlate this. It means that someone needs to actually operate off of that data. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of technology that helps to clean up the noise, to prioritize, to reduce the mean time to remediation, and reduce the window of time of exposure in production. So when we talk to security and development teams, usually we hear about having way too many alerts. We have one customer environment with a couple of million alerts that are open every single day. It means that it's very difficult for them to assess and to prioritize the risk, to correlate between all of these different tools. Usually the security organizations don't really have a very deep visibility into the CI/CD pipelines, which means that it's very difficult for them to find who the code owners are. It means that whenever they engage with the business, they ask for manual fixes to be made. It means that it's very difficult to build that sort of a feedback loop into the architecture and the pipeline guardrails to make sure that the same issues don't really repeat themselves. So just to give you an idea of what we do and why it matters. Essentially, Dazz connects to the pipeline and finds the origin of all of the vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. And this is a really good example from a customer environment that actually connected Dazz to their environment before Log4Shell. And what they do is that they actually use Dazz to build the remediation plan. The situation there was out of tens of thousands of different alerts that they had across numerous different scanners. What we found is that in total, there was about 17,000 different containers in production that were vulnerable back then. If we correlate that across the pipeline, if we try to find the origins, we see that there's about 700 different images that are affected, out of which only about 150 different Docker files that needs to be changed. And we actually found who the code owners are to that need to make these changes. So what it means is that instantly they had the right plan of action. They knew exactly who they need to engage with, knew exactly how to direct them to the right code repository, to the right file. And they had the fix in place to tell them, hey, this is the change you need to do to fix the entire production environment. And using that guidelines, they managed to remediate the entire environment within 4 days. So that made a huge impact for them. But honestly, right now, they're using Dazz continuously for every single vulnerability that's out there, for every single misconfiguration that's out there. And there's quite a bit. So just a bit about this solution and the technology. Dazz discovers the pipeline. So we build this graph mapping that connects code owners to repositories, to CI runs, to artifacts, to CD runs, to resources and workloads. And then we collect all of the vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that might come from all of the various different scanners. We overlay that information on top of this graph mapping, which gives us the ability to pivot around and say, well, hey, we've seen the same vulnerability in two sides of that map. We can even pivot and say, well, that vulnerability in production, we want to find out who is the right team that owns this. We want to find out who's the right repository where it needs to be fixed. So even if we have hundreds of different vulnerabilities in production right now, but they are coming from a single root cause, we would find that root cause and we would open a single ticket. And we can automate that process as a part of the development pipeline and as a part of the engineering process. So it could be a ticket, just like I mentioned, but it could also be an automated pull request that connects back to the CI/CD pipeline, which gives sort of the experience of a cloud-native automated remediation workflow where we can kick off the testing process, the promotion process, and it just orchestrates the entire data set from all of the various different scanners. So I mentioned that that initially what we do is that we map out the pipeline. So just to give you an idea of how it looks like visually, this is a sort of a medium-sized environment with a couple different pipelines. This is sort of a very high-level view. But what's nice about this view is that continuously we can find all of these new pipelines. We can find how developers actually modify them, and we can verify that the right security controls are in place. We can verify that the right artifacts are coming from the right locations. We can understand the origins of all of these different resources, which brings a lot of value for the engineering team, for the security team by itself, and assessing the coverage and being able to advise on new guardrails and verifying that the architecture actually makes sense. But what it also means is that whenever we bring the vulnerability and information into the table, now we have a really powerful source where we can actually pin down the information based on how developers actually view the infrastructure and the applications that are deployed in the cloud. So Dazz really is able to stitch that process together and automate the entire operational process of remediating these vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. So if you're interested to hear more, please contact us at dazz.io. My personal email is t@Dazz.io, and I'd love to chat some more. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Merav and Tomer. That was fantastic. We're going to move into the fireside chat to talk more about automation and the challenges organizations are facing when it comes to vulnerability remediation. So I'd like to bring Joe Silva into the discussion. Joe's been the CISO of Jones Lang LaSalle, technology-led global commercial real estate company since 2021. Joe previously led cybersecurity for the Global Credit Reporting Bureau, TransUnion, and has held roles leading cybersecurity services with Symantec and Eyesight Partners. And prior to moving into the private sector, Joe also spent a significant portion of his career in intelligence roles as a member of the US military and intelligence community. Welcome, Joe. Great to have you here.
Hey, thanks, Will. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So let's get started on the discussion. I'd like to kick us off with one question for you, Joe. So what were some of the key challenges that you were facing that led you towards wanting to explore new solutions and ultimately go down the route of implementing Dazz?
Well, as we were doing a better job of getting visibility into risk across all phases of our application development, to include when they're already in production, and we were employing more tools, we had much more data, right? We had unprecedented insight into the risk, but the remediation for that risk required teams to operate in multiple platforms, see sometimes redundant findings, didn't effectively support prioritization, and didn't even enable them to prioritize and size the work so that they could remediate in any kind of efficacious manner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is is the cloud bringing any new considerations for remediation, and how is it different?
Yeah, it's bringing all sorts of, considerations. One, I think the timeline to remediate needs to be faster, because increasingly we're seeing that attackers in the cloud sometimes understand how to leverage the cloud in attacks better than defenders understand how to understand an attack chain across cloud native services. But also all of the things that the cloud is doing for us to make us more efficient in the development community, the way that we've democratized infrastructure services across application teams, all of these services just constitute an increased attack surface that we need to shrink and defend. So, in that context, going towards my previous statement, there's a lot more to remediate across many different services. There's no shortage of tools. I'm sure you've done enough of these that there's no shortage of tools across all of the various facets of application development that will provide developers with a list of things that need to be remediated, which, all just calls for having some sort of, solution, a capability underpinned by a technology like Dazz that, helps teams put this, I'm going to use an overused term, in a single pane of glass, so that they can work, along in a prioritization that is aligned with how security teams think things should be prioritized.
Absolutely. And Merav, Tomer, is there anything you wanted to add to that? I mean, what's the sort of view from Dazz from your perspective?
Yes, I think Joe is absolutely accurate here. So when we look at cloud is an amazing opportunity, right? To develop fast, to deploy fast, and what we see is responsibilities are actually shifting more and more to DevOps and engineering, that they actually define the infrastructure now. So everything is code, right? So within all the opportunities to move fast, there is a lot of risk, within, the infrastructure as code and the vulnerabilities in containers and in the code and et cetera. So I think there's the opportunity here is that we can also remediate fast, right? We can map the pipeline automatically. We can identify resources and all the vulnerabilities on the resources directly into the, which pipeline they're coming from, who's the owner, what's the line of code, and how to fix them. So to leverage the cloud, infrastructure and cloud environment into fast remediation and at scale, this is what we've seen with the cloud. So yeah, attacks are super fast, but response could be not slower than that.
Yeah, excellent. And you mentioned infrastructure as code. I mean, how important a role do you think that plays as well, alongside the application remediation? The infrastructure, of course, is becoming an increasing or of increasing importance, I think, to manage. Do you see that too as well?
The question is to me, yeah. So absolutely, we see infrastructure as code in all type of technologies growing. I think it's a good thing, right? Because it's a more secure environment. Although there always, wherever there is a new technology, there are new risks and new attack surface. But we help organization identify the issues in the code base and being able to react very quickly. So you don't need to just focus on detecting anymore. You just need to be focused on how you fix your things and move on with, development.
Absolutely. I guess question for you, Joe. In your experience, and not just at JLL, where have you seen the greatest friction between security and other parts of the organization, particularly as it relates to security remediation, and how are these challenges being addressed?
Just having been at technology companies with hundreds of applications, right, and many development teams, my experience has been, one, even when everybody wants to do the exact right thing with regards to securing their technology, typically security teams have a one-to-many relationship with the various technology teams that they're supporting. And if I kind of look at the evolution of practices and like even supporting products, I think initially there were a lot of products that security teams would use to find vulnerabilities, and they would provide those vulnerabilities to the technology teams, right? So it was, from a technology engineering team perspective, things are just being thrown over the wall at them, right? And then from the security team's perspective, being in a one-to-many relationship, they would never be big enough to have all of the bandwidth they need to provide the bespoke advisory services in terms of how do you help technology teams. So then I think things evolved to include in the product space, where products started getting much better, helping a bit with the prioritization, or at least around the risk, and then a lot of remediation guidance. So not just here's a vulnerability, but now here's how you fix it. And here's some rough rubric, largely based around something like CVSS on just how to stratify. But unfortunately, just the deluge of high and critical vulnerabilities meant that you were, prioritizing between so many things that were of comparable severity, and the remediation guidance didn't scale. And again, what you saw was that created friction, and it could sometimes acrimony between the security team, which felt like they could never do enough for the application teams to help them, and the application teams just weren't doing what they needed to do. And the application teams, which they have to balance security with maintaining performant platforms and continuing to drive innovation into their products. And they're having to balance all of that. And the security team is not helping them figure out how can they size the most important security work that needs to be done and do things efficaciously. So I think that brings us to where we are today, and where Dazz plays a role for us is now we can provide a similar view. Here's prioritized issues across all of the various technologies, all of the various flavors of code that we're evaluating for vulnerabilities. But now here's how you can remediate at scale. And also, one of the things that I've seen Dazz do that we didn't necessarily appreciate early on was, with all of these tools that are maybe surveying different components of your attack surface for an application, there's some overlap. And what Dazz is doing is helping deduplicate that, which honestly builds credibility between the application teams who don't feel like they're seeing the same thing multiple times, and the security team, which is really represented in the platform. So now we're at the point where we can start to remediate at scale, leverage some of the positive aspects of the cloud. And I think that's really the only sustainable relationship between security teams and application teams now.
I would just jump in and say that, the vision that Joe kind of created and around remediation is something that we see more and more of our customers adopting. There is another case of one of our customers that actually yesterday won an innovation award with the project that we're doing together. They just called it dev-driven remediation versus like security-driven remediation. Just thinking about the developers, meeting them when they are, where they are, talking the language, right? Not the language of security, but rather the language of code that they can understand, bringing everything to them, which is prioritized and digested and contextualized, so they can act upon it and not just waste all the time just thinking about security. So I think that's kind of the future of what we see in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, Joe, from your perspective as well, I mean, what do you think the sort of future of remediation looks like as well? What do you think sort of good looks like looking forward in terms of automated remediation from this point?
A couple of things. One, obviously, it must be scalable, to my previous comment. At every possible opportunity, what had been a runtime fix needs to become a build time fix. That's really our vision. And security teams and application teams really, and it's going to be enabled by a technology product like Dazz, have to be on the exact same page about, what is the scalability, effectiveness, and prioritization of these remediations. Because teams are going to get much more capable at remediating at scale, but there will always be some things that go unremediated. And, for that period of time, security teams have to understand, where they need to implement mitigating controls.
Yeah, that's great. And just another question, I guess for you again, Joe. What do you think the importance of cloud remediation and automation is now? Given the recent global events, economic downturn, how do you see that?
Yeah, so if we just look at financial pressures that are going to be created by the downturn and assume this will be felt far and wide across security and engineering teams, from the point of view of security teams, there's just going to be less budget to buy new security tools to defend, maybe new components of the attack surface. So, innovation in terms of new cloud services and DevOps practices that creates new attack surface. I think the last few years, we've seen no shortage of innovation driving products to address those kind of bespoke use cases. The same availability of funds and labor to support those tools, to buy and support those tools is not going to exist. So security teams are going to have to make more trade-offs, and they're going to have to look for more scale in what they have. At the other end, engineering teams are also going to be capacity constrained, right? Our customers expect the same amount of quality and innovation from us. And so the amount of work is not shrinking, but the capacity to deliver that work is shrinking. So whatever we can do to minimize the amount of effort that needs to be generated or that needs to be expended to generate the same amount of risk reduction on the security side is going to help relieve some of those financial pressures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just one more question for Dazz before we move into the Q&A from the audience as well. Be interested to sort of hear from your perspective, what's next for Dazz? What does the kind of pipeline look like?
So we've such a big roadmap. I wish we had a bit more time every day to deliver on it quicker. But we're working very closely with all of our customers to verify that we're actually building the right set of capabilities for that vision that Joe and others are sharing with us. Because at the end of the day, these are the practitioners that need to utilize the technology and to do it day to day. And as much as we can automate, as much as we can make it easier for them, the better. So in terms of the broader vision that I can share in this conversation, I think that to me, just like the detection space right now, it's sort of a no-brainer that you can plug a couple of tools and you will have a decent amount of visibility for you to operate a security team off of. I think that in a couple of years from now, automation would be sort of in the same mindset. Obviously, we need automation. Obviously, we don't really want to have analysts going on a queue of alerts one by one. If we can replace it with smart ways to actually do it correctly, more precisely, and even faster. So I think this is the broader vision that we're getting to. But the path there is sort of an evolution, because some companies are a bit behind, some companies are a bit more cloud forward, and we are building a solution that would fit that would eventually fit all.
Excellent. Thank you, Tomer. We've got one question from the audience. So this is, how does the product work with hybrid multi-cloud environments, and does it cause latency?
So we support the three major public cloud providers, but we also support some of the private cloud implementations. We have a couple of customers that have recently started to use that in a hybrid mode. As to your question on latency, no, the process itself is sort of out of band in terms of it doesn't really interfere with the engineering process. The latency that it would cause on the intake of vulnerabilities and operating off them is really defined by the speed of detection. So it doesn't really cause any significant latency outside of what the detection tools are surfacing.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. Are there any final thoughts, I think, from the audience or from the panelists here? Merav, Joe, or Toma, anything you want to close on? Great. So I think we're approaching time. It's been a fascinating discussion. I want to thank you, Joe, and of course, Toma and Merav from Dazz for joining us, and all of those that have joined us online from all over the world. I really hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found it insightful. And of course, have a great day wherever you join us from. And we'll see you on the next Rise and Ignite. Thank you.
Thank you, Will.